Hey y'all, welcome to the Man with No Plan podcast with your host Dominic Villa, and today I have a very special guest, one of the trailblazers of Waco's art scene. Today I have the one and only Fiona Bond.
Hey, hi Dominic. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to be here.
For sure. I'm really appreciative that you came by today. I'm excited to tell your story. First, I'll just ask you, how are you doing?
I am trying to stay cool, and I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
For sure. So I want to go ahead and just jump right into it, Fiona. I want to kind of get a little bit into your background. I read that you are from Kent, England, correct?
Yes, that's where I was born, although I was raised in various different places, and I've had the privilege of living in 5 different countries. But yes, Kent was where I was born, Garden of England. I lived closer to France than to London. It's the far southeast of England.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, I'm a little bit of a kid at heart, so when I looked up Kent, I seen that it was like an hour away from Sandwich, England, and I was just joking.
The sandwich is from where sandwiches were invented, and actually we were very close to the coast, and my uncle was a ferry captain. And so we would jump on the ferry. He would allow us to go up to the bridge. I guess it was before people were worried about, whether people might blow up a ship or something. But it was so fun because as a kid I got to just hop on the ferry and go to France, and we would go and have lunch in France and then come back for bedtime.
Wow, some beautiful views out there, I imagine.
Yes, yeah, it was a pretty place to grow up.
So was art a big part of your life growing up?
It really was. And my mom was an artist. She's now, she's passed away, but she was a wonderful visual artist and creative thinker, I would say. My grandparents, all 4 grandparents were creatives. 2 of them were musicians. 2 of them were visual artists. And, really my parents and my grandparents steeped me in creative experiences from when I was little, and I was in an education system that really prioritized creativity. And so to me, that was entirely normal, to go to several plays a week, to see art exhibitions, to be surrounded by people who were making things, that was the water that I was swimming in.
That's pretty neat. I have a very similar upbringing in that at Waco Montessori. Well, not Waco Montessori, excuse me. I have a similar upbringing to that at the Montessori school that I went to, as it was filled with arts from Monet to O'Keeffe, just stuff like that, just like plastered over the wall in all of our hallways. And for me, growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up in, I didn't see art. It was at school that I was exposed to stuff like that, and it does make a big impact on a child. Yeah. When they get exposed to that.
And I bet you felt in that environment that when you were having fun, when you look back on it later, you were learning such a lot, but it was fun and it was creative and it kind of got your whole brain working, and that kind of immersive education experience is so rich and so powerful. And, it forms us, right? Yeah. That certainly formed me.
For sure. Before we get too far, I do want to speak about a little note that I have that I read about your great grandmother.
Yes.
She has a very cool, or your grandma as well, but also your great grandmother, as far as the Olympics go.
Yeah, she was one of the very first women to be allowed to compete in the Olympics. So she was a gymnast, and she competed in the Amsterdam Olympics. They were the very first Olympics where women were allowed to. It was considered very risque and very daring, but they were allowed to compete in gymnastics. And when you look at the photos of the tunics they were wearing, basically they were wearing more than I would wear on a typical Friday night. But it was very modest, and it was very gentle. It was what we call gymnastics now. They were not flipping across the floor or anything, but it was considered to be very daring for a women's team to compete in the Olympics. And she was one of the very first in that squad. She had already been a mother at that point. Wow. And that is even more incredible to me.
Definitely. Yeah, I wanted to bring that up because it's such a groundbreaking fact.
She was brave.
Yeah, definitely. And I also want to ask you too, was there a culture shock when you came here?
Not as much as you would think. And the reason for that is because when I was a kid, age 8 to 10, we lived in Houston for a couple of years. And my father worked for Shell. And he actually ended up being the research strategist for Shell UK. But we came to Houston for 2 years. And so I already knew what it was like to live in Texas. And actually, when we moved here, my kids were that same age. And so I felt like this was history repeating itself. It was really bizarre how that happened. And my husband is originally from the US. I've spent chunks of time in the US ever since I was 8 years old. And so it wasn't a huge culture shock. I knew to prepare myself for some of the things that were different, but there were some things that are unique to Central Texas for sure. And actually, a lot of those things are utterly beguiling and wonderful. But some of them were a bit of a surprise to the system as well. Sure. So it did take a while to get used to living and working here. But it wasn't as much of a shock as it might have been if I had not had those earlier experiences.
Yeah, that's true. I bet coming straight from there to here in adulthood, I bet that would be a very much so of a culture shock.
Yeah, because it's more, we share a language. But there are a lot of cultural things that are very different.
For sure. Speaking on culture, I want to ask you something fun. Could you give me could you give me 3 of your favorite albums of any genre?
Okay. Well, I'm seeing you about to ask this, and it's like choosing my favorite children. I work with so many artists of all genres that it's incredibly difficult. So what I tried to figure out is, what's been really defining as like a punctuation point? Because truly the truthful answer to your question is probably the last 3 albums I listened to, and I love so much that's happening in Waco. I love all the things that DJ Sice and Prescription are doing. I love the kind of emerging hip hop scene. I love the things that Keep Waco Loud are doing. There are so many great artists in Waco. But I can't pick among them.
Yeah, of course.
So I've tried to think about things that have been really kind of defining moments for me in my life. I'm going to say number 1 is probably Mark Knopfler's Local Hero album. It was music that he wrote for a movie which was set in Scotland. I wanted to be played at my funeral. So, if I die anytime soon, this is what needs to be played. But Local Hero was a beautiful movie, and there's a lot about that has really resonated for me, especially because it's about an American-Scottish kind of interaction. But also, I just love Mark Knopfler as a guitarist, and that's so evocative. And it's actually that the tune that he wrote, which is called "Coming Home," which is everyone's heard it. It actually also resonates with a lot of time that I spent in the northeast of England, because it's the football team. It's what's sung before every football game for Newcastle United.
Gotcha.
And then it's also played at our church here by Kathy Johnson, who's an amazing pianist, and it's been played at several funerals of people I really love.
Wow.
So that really resonates. I can't listen to it without bursting into floods of tears. But then my nephew, Devon Lougheed, in Canada, and his wife, Gina Kennedy, they have a group called Altered by Mom. And it is the coolest group. They're kind of an out rock group. Yeah. And they've written songs like My Heart is Larger Than the Ribs That Contain It, which I oh my gosh, I love that so much. It's high production, it's hilarious, it's evocative. Again, it makes me cry. Anything that makes me cry. And I don't cry that
Pretty
easily.
touching.
And then my third pick is Nigel Kennedy, who's a violinist. I'm a classical musician.
I love it.
Well, and I play the bagpipes as well, but that kind of doesn't count. I do love the Red Hot Chili Pipers, who are a bagpipe rock band that I try to emulate every so often, not always very successfully. But Nigel Kennedy did an album that was it was this really daring classical album, and it's now fairly old and loads of people are doing this, but he was kind of the first. So it was Vivaldi's Four Seasons, where he didn't rock it up, but he just made it so relevant. I think anything that is relatable and relevant really speaks to me.
Gotcha. I love it. I love to hear that, for sure.
That's very diverse.
Very. I love it. And then And then next, I'd like to ask you your top 3 movies.
See, again.
I know, it's tough. It's tough.
I'm going to say truly anything that is shown at Deep in the Heart Film Festival is powerful. I mean, that film festival just pulls at the heartstrings again, and it always makes me cry. It sounds like I cry very easily.
Hey.
The arts take me to that.
Yeah,
place.
the arts do it. They can do it.
But if I had to pick ones that have just been, like, again, really influential for me, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which I loved the movie, but I actually had it playing as I was in labor with my younger son. And it was the best experience. The midwives kept coming into the labor, the room. I had a water birth with him, and we were just laughing because that movie, I knew it really
hilarious.
well. It's so funny, and it made that birth very straightforward.
That's great.
And so, I'm forever grateful to that movie for getting me through that moment. And plus, I love the movie. Black Panther.
Amazing
because
movie.
It is amazing. I love Chadwick Boseman. I love how every aspect took creativity to the nth degree. Like the music, the costumes, the set, the cinematography, the script, everything. For a superhero movie, it was a whole new level of amazing.
For sure.
And I love the way that it used the power of all of those creative expressions to cast a completely different vision about who we could be, what we could be, how we could dare to think differently, change structures, all of that kind of thing. And then I'm a bit of a groupie for Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
Again, fantasy and, how we can reimagine bravery, the journey, things that challenge us. It's introspective as well as epic.
Sure.
I love that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's great. That's a solid list. That's a solid list from music to movies. I think I watched Black Panther like 4 times.
Oh my gosh.
In theaters.
Yes. I could watch it dozens of times.
I'm right with you. That's great. And the last 2 movies, one of the common themes for those movies, Lord of the Rings and Black Panther, they have a sort of escapism in those movies that really is very powerful to see. Especially Black Panther, you see a lot of representation. And I think it's just great how art can do that. And your experience with art, what is some of the most impactful themes that art has? What are some of the most impactful themes that art has for you?
That's a great question. And I think you've hit on some of that. It gives us this space for reimagining ourselves in a completely different way and test driving things that we can't do in real life, or at least are hard to do in real life. And the other thing that, all those kinds of things, when you talk about an album or a movie, I'm not just thinking about those things as products or my experience. What I'm also thinking of is how that's intersected with community for me, how that's connected me to other people and other parts of my life, because I think that shared experience that's the power of the arts. We are given permission through creative pursuits to come alongside other people who might not be like us and might not have experienced the world like us, but we can share an experience in real time and space. And that connects us in ways that allow us to be greater than the sum of the parts. The whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts. We've seen in the last couple of years so much disconnection, so many ways that we can be horrible as human beings, but also so many ways we can be amazing. And I believe passionately that the arts, that creative muscle that we flex, is what draws us closer to each other, what gives us shared imagination, shared vision for what we could be, and shared experiences that give us a commonality and connection that allow us then to have conversation and to, there are so many people who might have had a completely different experience in life to me, but if we've both seen the same movie, we instantly have something to talk about, something to connect us.
Exactly. Yes, ma'am. No, that's you said a mouthful for sure, and I hope everyone who's listening or watching, I think that is a perfect example of the impact of not just film or music, but just the arts in general, and also an example of Fiona just having such a such a art driven mindset, and being not only art driven but community focused and community driven. I think those are very two powerful things, and we'll get more into that here in a few moments. We're gonna take a quick commercial break and then come right back to it. We're gonna dive a little bit more into Fiona and her brain as it works so greatly, and we'll be right back. What's up, y'all? This episode was brought to you by Helados Azteca. Find them on Franklin Avenue on Concord or right off of North Valley Mills in the shopping center next to Smalls. Also, this episode was brought to you by We Grow the Code. They handle marketing while you can handle business. Welcome back, y'all, to the Man with No Plan podcast. We're here today with Fiona. She is talking all about the arts and the impact that it has on us, and I'm so blessed for her to be here today. We're going to jump back into it, and I want to start by asking you, how do you stay motivated in a position that requires so much?
You understand what it's like because you bring so much to the table all the time with what you do. And I'm sure you can predict what my answer to this is going to be, that I surround myself with amazing people. Yeah. They inspire me and they motivate me all the time. I have an incredible husband he is an extreme introvert. So a lot of people have no idea even that I'm married, but he's an incredible support to me. And so my kids. But anyone who knows the Creative Waco team knows how inspiring those people are. So working with people like Kennedy, Amanda, Stephanie, Sol, Bree, just an absolutely incredible team.
For sure.
And it is just the greatest of privileges to be working with them. Our board is incredible. We just added Sakina Dixon to our team, and she's also doing an amazing job. Truly, that they all have such energy and ideas. And I think, especially during the pandemic, when sometimes it was hard, especially in the creative and cultural sector, to know where things were going next. There was so much unpredictability, and for a lot of communities, it was very devastating to their arts and cultural sector. Waco actually came out of that dark time better than most communities, and I put that entirely down to the strength of my team, the board that we have, because they kept the ideas flowing, they kept it practical, they kept it relevant and relatable, they kept it, okay, we don't know what we can do next month, but we know what we can do today. Yeah. We know what we can do next week. Here are the problems that are stopping people from being successful today. Let's fix those. And we just kept doing that, and that ended up being really powerful. And so I think at a time when people most needed creativity but had least access to it, actually we managed to carve a pathway through that. So, there are definitely times when you look around at all the brokenness in the world, and it is hard to find hope and motivation in some of those moments. And my team itself, we've had medical issues, and we've had, people have had personal issues that have been very painful to deal with through that time. And knowing that you have that incredible support system, knowing that we're surrounded by people for whom the value of hope is going to supersede anything else is really powerful.
Definitely. And I will say, I'll be one of the first to say that y'all have an all-star team.
We do.
In the organization. One thing that I love about Creative Waco is that it's one of the few organizations that I've worked with that, like, the people care beyond the paycheck.
Oh, yes.
And y'all push the envelope every year of what Waco can be, especially in the art scene. And so, just knowing you and knowing the organization for the last few years, I just seen the art scene in Waco just expand. Because when I was growing up here, we didn't really have that at all. Being here all my life, especially in the early days, we didn't really go downtown. It was like, there's nothing to see. It's abandoned buildings, vacated. It's just ran down. And over time, it started to change. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the beginning of Creative Waco for those that don't know. Is it on its 5th year?
We were formed in 2015.
2015.
So yeah, we're like
7.
Let's count
One of them.
That's right. We're year
I think 7.
Yeah.
I think 7.
Yeah. I feel like we lost 2 years there.
Right.
We kind of did and didn't at the same time. Yeah, year 7. That seems incredible to me because it still amazes me that anyone believed enough in our vision at the time to just go, you know what, we're going to put some money into this and see what happens. And the board that we had in that very first month was absolutely incredible because it was just me and a group of people that really believed that Waco was ready to grow its artistic and cultural vision and life and identity, but didn't really know how that was going to happen. And a vision to, well, if we at least move towards getting a downtown cultural district, then we know we can bring all the people to the table who need to be part of this conversation.
Sure.
And truly, I always give credit to Matt Meadows at the Chamber of Commerce, who gave us a home.
Sure.
We kind of emerged, at the time, Chris McGowan was working at the Greater Waco Chamber and was kind of our point person and one of our foundational board members and is still on our board. He's actually our vice chair. But he and Matt Meadows made it possible for us to have a home and an identity right from day one. And then Mayor Malcolm Duncan and Dale Fissler, who was the city manager, both really believed that Waco needed kind of a Department of Cultural Affairs, but did not want it to be in the city because they'd seen models in other cities where you could be much more light on your feet if you had an independent nonprofit leading the charge on those kinds of things. And that was actually the vision that I had as well. And then the Waco and Cooper Foundations. Those were the core team that made it all happen because we had about 10 years worth of strategic planning in Waco. I say we, I wasn't part of that because I wasn't in Waco at that time. But Waco had about 10 years of strategic planning from multiple organizations, each of which had identified cultural growth as a really core element of Waco's next stage. But there was no organization that was tasked with implementing those goals. And so that's what Creative Waco was from day one. We were the Commission on the Arts, the organization that was kind of envisioned as being the backbone organization for doing the behind the scenes work of all the things that are needed to grow the artistic and cultural life and community.
For sure. That, like I said, the work that y'all have done is just, you can't even put a word to it of how impactful it's been.
Thank you. That means such a lot. It really does. Because, sometimes if you're on the coalface, you don't see it every day. For sure. Yeah, no, and I know especially too, like in some groups you have a local side of town, or it's like very concentrated with people who are from here. And then you have, transplants, people who have maybe been here for a little bit or been here for a while. I think Creative Waco brings everybody together, the best of all the organizations that I've worked with so far. I think there are other organizations that do a great job as well. But I think, just having that background of artwork, or the background of arts and film and other mediums like that, I think that's a great way to bring people together. That means so much to hear, because really that's our intention.
For sure. Yeah. And y'all get it done every year.
We have some fun doing it too.
For sure.
We get to do cool stuff.
Definitely. We're about to wrap up here in a few, but I really want to see if you had a message, or what would you tell someone in the community who was born and raised here? What would you like the community to know about Creative Waco?
I think I'd like them to know that, we never want to be the people out front. We always want to be shining the spotlight on the talent that is growing in this community. And if I had a call to action, it would be get involved, do cool stuff. It would certainly be like sign up for the Waco Insider, because that is the best listing of all of the great stuff that's going on in our community. If you do nothing else, make sure that you know what's going on, because, it used to be really hard to find out what was going on in this community, and now it's not. There's so much great stuff going on, and wacoinsider.org has this, great weekly email that you can sign up for, where you get a push in your inbox, all the cool stuff that's going on. And I think it's really easy for people who are not in the arts and cultural sector to support and be champions and cheerleaders. In fact, that's what we need most.
For sure.
We need audiences to grow. We need people to pick musicians that they love and want to support. We've got 5 new theatre companies in our community that have sprung up pre and during COVID. We had 12 new businesses that were part of our kind of arts business incubator program that sprung up or leveled up during COVID and are all thriving and doing amazing things. Everything from coaching gospel music through to quilt making workshops. And so there is literally something for everyone. There is really something for everyone to get involved in. And the great thing about growing cool artists and creatives is it becomes this wonderful positive cycle that attracts more activity, attracts more cool factor, attracts economic development, all the things that we want to see that make a really vibrant, interesting community. And the more people participate, the more they'll enjoy. I mean, our call to action is have fun.
Definitely.
Have fun and do cool things.
For sure.
Because that's actually what makes our community more connected, gives a greater sense of identity and pride, connectivity, shared purpose and vision. It also helps to develop us as a destination. We're one of the top cultural destinations in Texas, rising cultural destinations in Texas. Who would have thought that a few years ago? People come to Waco obviously for Magnolia, but also for some of those add-on experiences. And, we're now turning our vision to how do we grow professionalism? How do we support people of all kinds in realizing their dreams? How do we surround them with the support that they need? And sometimes that's funding. Sometimes that's connections. Sometimes that's coaching. Sometimes that's mental health support. It's all the things. But then also, what kind of infrastructure do we need? So we are working with our city, county, chambers in what do we do next? Can we deliver a new performing arts center for downtown? And actually, one of the things that I really want to see for this community is joining the dots between the technical capabilities that are needed to make that shine and the artistic and creative capabilities.
Right.
Because right now, where it's happening in terms of creative explosion is all in film, digital media, music, fashion. All of those industries depend on people who have great film, digital media, sound, lighting, technical expertise as part of their creative portfolio. And so if we can figure out how to build facilities and create infrastructure that is going to cultivate those skill sets, as well as people who are amazing dancers and actors and writers and visual artists, put those things together and we will have the most exciting, innovative, thrilling place to live that is going to become its own magnet.
Yeah. I'm excited. I got chills thinking about that. I can't wait. I encourage, especially the younger people in town, I really encourage you to look more into Creative Waco, follow their socials and look on their website. Y'all have some great programs, especially like the art apprenticeship.
Yes.
I love seeing kids from all different schools, University, Waco, Rappaport, and beyond, just coming together, and creating.
And you are our mentor in that program this year, and we are thrilled to have you because you are, those high school students will look to you and go, hey, here's a kid that came from my high school that is doing really well, and creativity is what is making his living.
For sure.
And I mean, that is thrilling, especially for people who have not been surrounded by that before. It's really, it has become such an amazing win for our community, for all the participants, and then for the community because the incredible murals and films that are produced.
For sure. And one thing that I love that y'all do is you'll have a mural finder And so anybody can find any mural, and that's great. I mean,
an interactive map.
Yeah,
to,
exactly.
discover the story behind each of the murals in our community.
And just snap it up for sure. So,
and actually, that's something else we're wanting people's input on right now. We have a questionnaire out in the public domain in both English and Spanish to find out what people want, what kind of public art people want, what they like, what they don't like, what their opinions are. So that's something else that, if I can do another call to action, it would be participate in that survey.
There you go. Is that on y'all's socials? Like, can people find that? Okay.
And on our website as well.
Okay, yeah. So y'all heard her. Check out the socials and check out her website. Check out the Creative Waco website. With tons of info on there. And then take the survey. We can only get better with more feedback. So
Absolutely.
Hearing from you and hearing from the people in the community is what makes it better. So
we have to be a learning organization. That's what creativity is, and so we want that feedback all the time. For
sure. So I am just blown away that you were able to come by today. I am thankful.
It's a privilege.
I am thankful to hear your story.
You've made great things happen. I'm a huge Dominic fan.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I thank you for being on today. And
thank you.
I appreciate you coming on the Man with No Plan podcast.
Well, I think you are definitely a man with a plan. But thank you so much, Dom.
Thank you. All right. Peace. Hey, y'all. I want to say from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate y'all checking out the episode. I look forward to bringing them out every week. Stay tuned to the Instagram for more updates on who else I bring on. And make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, A Man with No Plan Podcast. Peace.